"I can't believe she did this," I whispered to myself as I held the letter in my hands, my heart pounding in a strange mix of shock and disbelief. The envelope was plain, yet heavy with the weight of betrayal. Before we start the story, leave a comment telling us where you are watching from, and at the end don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10, enjoy the story. I had expected the usual insurance statement, maybe a reminder of the upcoming annual payment, but what I saw made the world tilt for a moment. Margaret, my mother-in-law, had changed the beneficiary on my late husband's life insurance policy. My eyes scanned the words over and over, each line feeling like a cold wind blowing through the room. I placed the paper on the oak table in my living room, a hand-carved piece David had bought us for our anniversary 30 years ago, and sank into the armchair beside it. The room was quiet except for the faint ticking of the wall clock and the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. I took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline settle into a careful calm. I reminded myself that rushing or showing anger would only give her the satisfaction she wanted. For decades, I had kept the family together, hosting Thanksgiving dinners that stretched into the evening, baking pies that vanished before I could even take a slice, arranging birthday surprises for grandchildren with meticulous care. Every plate polished, every candle lit with precision, every smile offered sincerely. And now this. The letter lay on my lap like a mirror reflecting not just Margaret's ambition but the years of trust one had placed in her. I opened my laptop and brought up my email, scrolling through past messages I had saved carefully over the years, organizing them by date, subject, sender. There it was. Every message, every instruction, every confirmation regarding the life insurance, all in my digital hands. The emails showed that I had been meticulous, following the paperwork exactly, and yet someone had tried to undermine the arrangements. I leaned back, the fabric of the chair creaking under me, and allowed myself a moment to consider the irony. Margaret had underestimated the quiet patience I had cultivated in my life, the kind that allowed me to observe, to gather, to understand, and now, to prepare. I poured myself a cup of chamomile tea, the steam curling gently toward the ceiling, and let my mind trace the timeline of events. The first email confirming the policy, the follow-up on the signatures, the automated reminders that had been sent to both of us. Each step meticulously documented. Each step now serving as evidence of foresight, not recklessness. Outside, the afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room, illuminating dust motes that danced in the beams. The light felt like a quiet ally, marking the passage of time and the inevitability of truth. I sipped the tea slowly, letting it warm my hands, my gaze shifting between the letter and the laptop screen. I could feel the subtle shift inside me, from shock to a cold, deliberate focus. This was not about revenge, it was about clarity, about ensuring what was rightfully intended would not be stolen. My mind wandered briefly to David, my son, who had always trusted me to handle the family matters with discretion and care. He did not yet know the full extent of Margaret's actions, and I resolved to approach him carefully, to let him see the facts without emotion clouding the story. I set the tea aside, the ceramic clinking softly against the saucer, and leaned over the laptop again, scrolling through the emails once more, letting the details embed themselves in my memory. Each timestamp, each signature, each reply from the insurance agent reinforced the certainty that I had been meticulous and that Margaret's attempt would not succeed. I closed the laptop and looked out the window at the small garden my husband had planted decades ago, now overgrown with late summer flowers. Their stubbornness to bloom reminded me of resilience, of endurance, and of the quiet power that comes from patience and planning. I felt a subtle smile touch my lips, not of joy, but of a calm satisfaction, knowing that the truth was on my side. The clock ticked on, and I sat still, letting the silence of the house embrace me, preparing for the moment when facts would meet confrontation. Knowing that when that time came, I would stand steady, unwavering, and in control. The house was quiet, every corner filled with a stillness that felt almost deliberate, as if it were holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. I moved to the window and looked out over the garden, noticing the late summer sun catching the petals of the wildflowers in brilliant bursts of color. I poured myself a glass of water and carried it to the living room, setting it on the side table beside my armchair. The envelope remained unopened on the table, a silent witness to the storm that had yet to fully unfold. I allowed my mind to trace the steps of the past few weeks, each memory a subtle clue, each interaction a piece of the puzzle that led to this moment. David had called a few days ago, his voice cautious, as though he was testing the waters, feeling out the undercurrents in the family without revealing the full extent of what he suspected. Margaret, with her practiced composure and soft smiles, had managed to keep her intentions hidden, but in those fleeting seconds when she thought no one was watching, small gestures and brief glances had given her away. I remembered the morning I discovered a discrepancy in the policy details, the way my hands had trembled slightly as I compared the digital records to the official statements. I had not allowed panic to take over. Instead, I had organized every document, highlighted dates, and created a sequence of events that left nothing to chance. Each email, each note, each confirmation from the insurance agent was a step in a path that led to undeniable clarity. Sitting in the living room, I allowed myself to acknowledge a quiet satisfaction that came from preparedness, a sense of control that was both comforting and empowering. The sunlight shifted, casting long shadows across the room, and I watched as they stretched over the furniture, over the familiar objects that had accompanied decades of life, love, and care. The oak table, the armchair, the framed photographs of family events long past, all served as anchors in a world that had recently felt unsteady. I thought of David again, imagining the moment he would see. The documents, the email trail laid bare, the truth revealed without exaggeration or emotion. It was not revenge I sought, but justice in its purest form, the kind that required patience and careful observation rather than confrontation and anger. I sipped the water slowly, feeling the cool liquid steady my nerves and clarify my focus. Every detail mattered, every piece of evidence was significant. I rehearsed the sequence in my mind, preparing for the conversation, anticipating questions, and mapping out responses that would be calm yet firm. The house remained silent, the quiet amplifying each thought, each heartbeat, as if it, too, understood the weight of the decisions that were about to be faced. I glanced at the clock, noting the passage of time, the slow march of hours that would eventually lead to clarity and resolution. My gaze returned to the emails on the laptop, each one a testament to diligence, patience, and the meticulous attention to detail that had become my hallmark. In the soft afternoon light, I felt a sense of readiness, an internal alignment that balanced the shock of discovery with the confidence of knowing the truth. The room felt almost like a stage, set for a careful unfolding of events, where every movement, every word, and every glance would carry weight. I settled back in the chair, letting my posture reflect quiet assurance, preparing for the moment when facts would meet conversation, and knowing that when that time came, I would stand composed, deliberate, and entirely in control. I opened the email folder once more, the sequence of messages neatly lined up by date and sender, and I could see the careful progression of instructions and confirmations that had been exchanged over the years. Each click revealed a layer of planning, a trail of diligence that Margaret had apparently overlooked. The sunlight in the room shifted slightly as the afternoon edged toward early evening, casting gentle warmth across the polished wooden floors and illuminating the photographs on the wall. I traced my finger along the keyboard as if connecting dots, reviewing each line, each timestamp, and each acknowledgement, confirming that every step I had taken was precise and in accordance with my late husband's wishes. My tea had cooled beside me, untouched, yet its presence was grounding, a small ritual of focus amid the whirlwind of realization. I thought about the countless hours spent attending to family matters, the meticulous attention I had paid to birthdays, graduations, and anniversaries, all while maintaining the household and ensuring that David's life had stability and support. Now, that same care and attention became my shield and my advantage. The pattern emerged clearly, the subtle shifts in Margaret's behavior, the brief moments of hesitation, the soft smiles that did not reach her eyes, all these details were now anchored to concrete proof. I reviewed the instructions from the insurance agent, cross-referencing each note with the dates in the emails. Every requirement, every requested signature, every follow-up confirmation was accounted for, creating a map of meticulous oversight that left no room for dispute. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the contours of the armrests and the steady hum of the house around me, and allowed a sense of quiet determination to settle in. There was no need for haste, no need for confrontation at this stage. The knowledge I possessed was powerful precisely because it was measured and deliberate. Each email represented not just an action taken, but a choice, a commitment to accuracy, and a subtle demonstration of responsibility that contrasted starkly with the reckless assumption Margaret had made. My gaze drifted to the garden outside, the soft rustling of leaves in the early evening breeze, and I considered the timing of the conversation that would inevitably come. I would present the facts calmly, letting the evidence speak for itself, while maintaining an air of composure that underscored my authority and steadiness. The lamp beside the armchair cast a warm glow across the room, illuminating the letters, the laptop, and the careful notes I had prepared. I sipped the water I had poured earlier, feeling the coolness steady my breath and sharpen my focus. Each element of the setting, from the well-worn furniture to the faint aroma of the chamomile, became part of a controlled environment, one that reflected the precision with which I had approached every detail of this discovery. I was ready to navigate the subtle confrontations ahead with clarity, patience, and unwavering confidence, knowing that the careful accumulation of evidence, the thorough record-keeping, and the deliberate attention to detail would guide the family toward a resolution that acknowledged the truth without unnecessary drama or escalation. The late afternoon light shifted to a warmer hue, spilling across the living room and casting long shadows over the familiar furniture. Helen adjusted the sleeve of her cardigan and leaned slightly forward in her chair, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her teacup, the ceramic cool against her skin. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves of the maple tree in the yard, carrying with it the faint scent of freshly cut grass and the subtle aroma of the garden flowers. She allowed herself to pause for a moment, observing the rhythm of the house, the quiet that seemed almost deliberate, as though the walls themselves were aware of the anticipation building within. Each detail mattered, the polished surface of the oak table, the framed photographs of family events, the light filtering through the blinds, and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. These were markers of a life carefully constructed, a life built on diligence, love, and consistency. Helen revisited the emails she had meticulously catalogued, noting the precise dates, times, and exchanges that formed a clear record of the insurance policy and its intended beneficiary. Every confirmation, every digital signature, every acknowledgement from the agent reinforced the certainty she carried. The awareness of Margaret's attempt to alter the arrangement without her knowledge brought a quiet clarity rather than panic, a recognition that patience and preparation had placed her in a position of control. Helen reflected on the countless mornings she had prepared breakfasts for her family, the evenings spent hosting gatherings with precise attention to detail, and the small, often unnoticed acts of care that had kept the family functioning harmoniously. Those same skills now became tools of observation and analysis, allowing her to see patterns, anticipate potential questions, and plan her approach with deliberate calm. She sipped the chamomile tea, the warmth spreading through her hands and into her consciousness, steadying her thoughts. The gentle creak of the chair under her weight, the subtle scent of the room, the quiet ticking of the clock, all contributed to a heightened awareness of the present moment and the necessity of measured action. Helen mentally rehearsed the conversations to come, considering the phrasing, the pacing, and the tone that would allow the facts to speak with authority without confrontation. She contemplated how to present the evidence in a way that would be undeniable, yet composed, each document, each timestamp, each email acting as its own argument. The calm of the setting contrasted with the intensity of the situation, providing a framework in which truth could unfold naturally. As the sun dipped lower, casting the room in a soft, golden glow, Helen felt a sense of readiness settle fully over her. She was prepared to navigate the upcoming discussions with precision, clarity, and an unwavering confidence that stemmed from her meticulous attention to detail and her unshakable patience. In this quiet, measured state, she recognized the power inherent in preparation, observation, and strategic foresight, and she sat with that awareness, fully composed, fully present, and entirely in command of the unfolding situation. Helen heard the faint hum of the air conditioning shift as the house settled into the quiet rhythm of early evening, the kind of calm that felt almost deliberate after a day filled with small but significant realizations. She took a slow breath, letting the warmth from the teacup in her hands ground her thoughts as she reviewed the evidence once more, the careful sequence of emails and confirmations providing an undeniable narrative of diligence and oversight. Each line of text on the laptop screen seemed to pulse with a quiet authority, a record of her careful attention and methodical care that Margaret had evidently underestimated. The living room was bathed in the soft amber glow of the setting sun, highlighting the familiar details, the polished hardwood floors, the framed family photos, the neat stacks of paperwork that Helen had organized with precise intent. She allowed her mind to wander briefly over the past, the moments when she had quietly mediated disagreements, prepared holiday dinners, and coordinated family gatherings, all while remaining observant and aware of subtle undercurrents in relationships that often went unnoticed. That same attentiveness now allowed her to recognize patterns, to anticipate questions, and to understand the full scope of Margaret's actions without allowing anger or frustration to cloud her judgment. Helen reviewed the timeline she had compiled, cross-referencing dates of email exchanges with insurance notifications, noting the way each piece of evidence aligned perfectly with her late husband's original intentions. She could see the logical flow clearly, the consistency of her oversight contrasting sharply with the careless assumptions that Margaret had made. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of blooming gardenias from the backyard, and she felt a sense of calm determination settle fully over her. The tea had cooled but remained comforting, a ritual that connected her present vigilance with the decades of attentiveness that had defined her role in the family. She considered the conversation that would eventually take place with David, her son, imagining the clarity and certainty in her presentation, the deliberate pace that would allow the facts to be fully appreciated. The room was still, and in that stillness, she found focus, each detail of the house, the furniture, the photographs, the letters, and the soft lighting contributing to a sense of readiness and control. Helen allowed herself a subtle exhale, a quiet acknowledgement of the patience and preparation that had brought her to this moment, recognizing the power in measured action and careful observation. Every document she held, every digital record she reviewed, became a testament to foresight, responsibility, and an unwavering commitment to the truth. As the shadows lengthened and the sun dipped below the horizon, she remained seated, poised and composed, fully aware that the forthcoming interactions would unfold with clarity and precision, guided by the meticulous attention to detail and the quiet authority she had cultivated over a lifetime of care and diligence. The sun had begun to dip lower in the sky, the warm light filtering through the blinds and casting long stripes across the floor, highlighting the meticulous arrangement of papers and photographs on the oak table. Helen took a slow, deliberate sip of her tea, letting the warmth anchor her thoughts as she considered the sequence of actions she would take. Each email she had archived, every confirmation from the insurance agent, and every signature meticulously recorded served as a map that guided her through the careful strategy she had devised. She could feel the quiet power in preparation, the kind that comes not from anger but from understanding and patience, knowing that clarity and truth would reveal themselves at the right moment. Her gaze shifted to the family photographs on the wall, images of celebrations and ordinary days alike, reminding her of the stability she had maintained and the dedication she had given to the family throughout the years. The contrast between those moments of genuine care and the subtle manipulation she had uncovered now sharpened her focus. She adjusted her cardigan, the soft fabric comforting against her skin, and leaned slightly forward in her chair, reviewing her notes once again. The order of emails, the dates and times, the threads of communication, all aligned perfectly to support the original intent of the policy. Helen traced her finger along the laptop screen, mentally rehearsing how she would present the facts in a manner that was calm, precise, and undeniable. Outside, the faint rustle of leaves in the evening breeze mingled with the distant sounds of neighborhood life, a reminder that the world continued beyond the quiet intensity of the living room. She allowed herself a subtle smile, not one of triumph, but of measured confidence, the kind that comes from knowing the truth and having the foresight to prepare. Every small action, every carefully documented step, contributed to a sense of control and readiness. Helen imagined the moment when she would share the evidence with David, her son, and possibly others involved, considering the clarity and authority she could convey without resorting to confrontation or raised voices. She observed the soft shadows stretching across the floor and furniture, noticing the way the light illuminated the documents she had arranged, each piece of evidence poised to speak for itself. The quiet of the house amplified her focus, allowing her to appreciate the subtleties of timing, tone, and presentation that would make the forthcoming conversation both effective and composed. Helen leaned back slightly, feeling the stability of the chair beneath her, and let her mind settle into a state of controlled anticipation, aware that the careful orchestration of preparation, observation, and collected evidence would guide the family toward a resolution that respected truth, maintained dignity, and reflected the patience and prudence she had cultivated over decades of careful attention to the household, the family, and the responsibilities she had borne with quiet dedication. Helen stood and straightened the chair beneath her, the quiet of the house settling around her like a familiar blanket. She moved slowly to the table where the documents and emails were laid out, each item positioned with precision to ensure clarity and accessibility. The soft light from the nearby lamp glimmered against the polished surfaces, highlighting the meticulous order of every paper, every note, every digital confirmation printed for review. She ran her fingers lightly over the stack of documents, feeling the subtle texture of the paper and the weight of each piece of evidence in her hands, a tangible representation of careful planning and careful oversight. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves of the maple tree, carrying a gentle scent of late summer blooms that drifted through the open window and into the room, mingling with the faint aroma of tea. Helen's gaze moved across the room, taking in the photographs of family events, the familiar furniture, the small trinkets that had accumulated over decades, and she allowed herself to acknowledge the steady confidence that had grown from her careful attention and preparation. She reviewed the order in which she would present the information to David, considering the clarity and calm tone that would allow the facts to speak without embellishment, each step precise and deliberate. The soft ticking of the clock punctuated the quiet, a rhythm that reinforced the measured pace she intended to maintain during the forthcoming discussion. Helen's thoughts drifted momentarily to the past, recalling the many ways she had ensured the well-being and stability of the household, the subtle guidance she had offered to David, and the countless occasions when her careful organization and observation had kept potential conflicts from arising. All of these experiences now contributed to a quiet, assured readiness, a recognition that patience and preparation were as powerful as any words she could speak. She poured herself another cup of water, the cool liquid steadying her breath and providing a moment of reflection as she considered the conversation that would soon unfold. Every email, every printed confirmation, every note she had preserved was a testament to diligence, responsibility, and meticulous attention to detail, forming an unassailable foundation upon which she could calmly present the truth. The lamp's glow softened further, casting a warm light across the documents, highlighting the careful alignment of the text and reflecting off the polished surfaces of the oak table. Helen settled back slightly, her posture composed, her hands resting lightly on the table, and allowed herself to appreciate the quiet power that came from knowing the facts, being fully prepared, and maintaining a controlled presence. The gentle ambient noises of the house, the faint hum of the refrigerator, and the distant sounds of evening settling in the neighborhood reinforced the calm, deliberate atmosphere that Helen had cultivated, one that would allow the evidence to guide the conversation naturally and decisively, ensuring that the truth would be recognized with clarity and authority. The evening had settled fully over the neighborhood, and the room was bathed in the gentle, golden glow of the table lamp, reflecting softly off the polished surfaces and the neatly arranged documents. Helen sat in her chair, her posture poised and composed, hands resting lightly on the stack of papers, each one a tangible representation of diligence and foresight. The faint sounds of distant traffic and the occasional chirp of a bird settling for the night reminded her of the world continuing beyond the calm intensity of her living room. She reviewed the email chain one last time, noting the clarity of every date, every confirmation, and every instruction that had been sent and received over the years, creating a clear and irrefutable trail of evidence. Helen's mind traced the interactions she had observed from Margaret, recalling the subtle gestures, the faint shifts in tone, and the carefully calculated words that had now been contextualized by the proof she possessed. She allowed herself a deep, steady breath, feeling the warmth of the tea in her hands and the soft cushion of the chair beneath her, grounding her focus. The photographs on the wall captured decades of family life, moments of celebration, quiet afternoons, and ordinary days that had been shaped by care and attention, and they now seemed to silently witness the careful preparation that had brought Helen to this moment. She imagined the conversation that would follow, how the calm presentation of facts, the deliberate pacing, and the unassailable clarity of evidence would leave little room for argument or distraction. Every document, every email, and every confirmation was positioned to speak for itself, forming a narrative that was as precise as it was inevitable. Helen's eyes moved to the window, where the last traces of sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting long, soft shadows across the hardwood floor and illuminating the garden beyond, the late summer blooms swaying gently in the breeze. She felt a quiet satisfaction, a recognition of the careful preparation, patience, and attention to detail that had allowed her to arrive at this juncture with clarity and confidence. The room, the light, the air, and the familiar objects around her created an atmosphere of calm authority, one that would underscore every word and action in the moments to come. Helen took another measured sip of tea, her thoughts steady, her mind fully aligned with the sequence she had meticulously planned. The quiet hum of the house seemed to harmonize with the deliberate cadence of her breathing, each exhale reinforcing her control, each inhale filling her with clarity. She considered how David would respond when he saw the documents laid out, the evidence presented without emotion, just facts, clear and undeniable. The calm, deliberate environment provided the perfect backdrop, allowing truth to emerge naturally, untainted by dramatics or speculation. Helen felt a subtle, assured smile touch her lips, not from triumph, but from a deep understanding of the power inherent in preparation, patience, and composure. As the night deepened, she remained seated, poised, ready for the moment when all would be revealed, knowing that the quiet confidence she carried was itself a statement, an unspoken authority that would guide the family toward clarity and resolution, preserving dignity and ensuring that the truth was recognized with precision and calm certainty. Helen finally placed the last printed email in the neat stack on the table, the afternoon sun now fully giving way to the soft glow of the evening lamp. The room was quiet, filled with the kind of silence that carried anticipation rather than emptiness. She sipped her remaining tea slowly, the cool liquid steadying her breath and allowing her mind to trace the upcoming conversation with clarity. Every detail had been considered, the sequence of presenting the emails, the timing, the tone in which she would deliver each fact, and the deliberate calm that would underscore her authority. Outside, the faint sounds of the neighborhood evening began to settle, distant voices, the low hum of passing cars, and the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Helen looked at the photographs on the wall, images capturing decades of celebrations, family vacations, and quiet moments, all reminders of the life she had nurtured and the careful attention she had given to her family. These images also reminded her of the contrast between genuine care and the subtle manipulations she had uncovered, reinforcing the importance of preparation and measured response. She leaned back slightly, allowing herself a moment to feel the quiet satisfaction that comes from readiness, the assurance that each action she had taken was deliberate and thorough. The stack of emails, the printed confirmations, and the timeline she had constructed formed an unassailable foundation, each piece reinforcing the narrative of diligence and careful oversight. Helen imagined the sequence of steps she would follow, how the evidence would be laid out clearly, how each document would naturally speak to the truth without the need for embellishment. The calm of the room, the soft glow of the lamp, the faint scent of the garden drifting through the open window, all contributed to a sense of control, a composed environment that reflected the precision and patience she had cultivated over decades. She allowed her mind to run through potential questions, anticipating the need for clarity, consistency, and unwavering calm. Every scenario was accounted for, every response measured, and the evidence itself provided the authority she required. Helen felt a subtle smile, not born from triumph, but from the quiet power of preparation, the knowledge that truth, when presented with patience and clarity, would prevail. She rested her hands lightly on the table, the papers beneath them reassuringly tangible, and breathed in deeply, aligning herself fully with the deliberate calm that had guided her to this point. The room seemed to embrace her focus, every object, every shadow, every faint sound supporting the readiness she had meticulously cultivated, and she waited, poised and composed, for the moment when clarity would meet conversation, and the truth would unfold exactly as intended.